Good evening all, and welcome. It goes without saying that the golden age of hitchhiking has certainly come to an end, with most people now a bit more cautious as to who they let into their vehicle, and indeed, if they even want to get into a vehicle in the first place of an unknown person. However, those still brave enough to do it have horrors to share. So get comfortable and let the darkness take control. I was on a hitchhiking adventure from British Columbia, Canada to Antigua, Guatemala, which started in September of 2019. This post is taken from the notes in my journal, which I wrote as soon as I could after this insane experience. If you've ever hitchhiked before, you'll know how amazing it is, and how many cool people you can meet. Out of the thousands of rides across 40 countries, I've only ever had 2 bad and or dangerous encounters thumbing it, and this was my second one. I was taking a break from traveling to find weed trim work in California's Nevada City, a beautiful little town with a very interesting crowd, but got stuck a few towns over for not getting a ride all day. I ended up sleeping a night at the Love's gas station, which I had done plenty of times before. I've slept on worse places, at least Love's has a bathroom. In the morning I was a little more desperate to accept rides because no one was stopping and it had already been a whole day. I just wanted to get out of there. A pickup truck is speeding past me and slams the brakes ahead, then slowly backs up. Inside is a man and woman in their late 50s, and he says in a husky voice, "Where you heading, boy?" "Nevada City. Any distance helps." "Get in. We're gonna Uber." They seem normal enough, even without most of their teeth and hair, so I jumped in, and this all happened in rapid succession. I toss my bag in the back and jump in. I shut the door when I notice a pile of guns and bullets on the floor. Before I have time to rethink my decision, we speed off. So I'm trying to assess whether or not I'm in danger, and they start telling me how this guy just got out of jail for aggravated assault and how he beat that guy up so bad he can't think straight no more. And they both laugh. She's holding his seatbelt over his chest and they both smell like feces. And they start asking how much money I have, and I think, yep, I am not safe here. After hitchhiking all this way, I don't look particularly wealthy. I'm filthy, I need a shower, and look no different than the stereotypical homeless guy, so I try to seem more poor than I am, and more tough than I am too. I'm broke as hell, man. That's why I'm going into the city, hoping to make some cash trimming. The man looks me in the eye. "Well, you find it all right. You'll find it good. Don't be afraid to do no dirty work. If people try, they try and mess with you. You mess with them back, you get what I'm saying?" "Put your eyes on the damn road, Christ!" The woman points forward and he swerves back into the right lane. He asks me if I smoke, and knowing that California has legalized weed, I put 2 and 2 together. He's offering me a joint, so I say, "Yeah, I smoke." With a wild look in his eyes, he exclaims, "Great," and we turn off the highway and start down a dirt road. I'm now more than worried and look behind us. In the back of the truck is my bag, a chainsaw, a pickaxe, and a plastic tarp over something. This didn't help my anxiety. Finally, we stop in front of a clearing. The woman takes out not a joint but a meth pipe. This was the first time I've seen a meth pipe, and a lot of things start to make sense. While he lights up and exhales in the car, I've never seen smoke so white, by the way, I roll the window down as fast as possible because I didn't want to smoke that. The woman takes some as well, and they tell me how they were going to collect money that a woman owes them. "The damn woman's going to pay one way or another. Damn straight. She better have the money, or I'm going to grab her and say, 'Where's my money?' Oh, she'll have it all right. She'll have it or else. Say, son, you ever steal something? 'Cause we could make $20,000 today." I don't know exactly how to answer this guy, and he repeats, $20,000 today. Here, smoke some of this. He hands me the pipe. Nothing like meth, ain't that right? I gently reject it and say that meth's not really my thing, which he surprisingly takes well and smokes some more before putting it away and drives off back towards the highway. His driving is terrible. Swerving, speeding, hitting brakes abruptly, and starts trying to convince me to help them steal marijuana plants. You hold my gun, I'll drill the hole, I'll keep lookout. Yeah, baby girl will keep lookout. Now you gotta be careful if you hear the dogs, cause these guys are nasty, see? The dogs bite. And he reveals what looks like a terrible scar on his arm. I didn't really know what to do or how to get out of this situation, so I sounded as confident as possible and said that I was meeting a friend to look for work together and that they could be expecting me today. We neared the end of Yuba City where they pull over to the side. Well, it's your funeral. You don't want to eat, fine by me, but if you ever want the cash, you call me. And hands me his number. Hell no, I think. Thanks, I will. Quickly retrieving my bag and smiling nervously. The woman with a wave says, Take care now, God bless. And they speed off. I'm standing on the side of the road thinking, what the hell was that? Happy to be out of the car. Meth head 1 and 2, thanks for the offer to steal marijuana, but let's never meet again. Me and my mother were driving through our small town in southwest Virginia. My mother and father are divorced, and he lived in Tennessee. Anyway, they had very different viewpoints on helping out hitchhikers, as my dad was very much into hiking, camping, etc. But there was a woman walking down the road, mind you, and it was very hot outside. It was the summer, and I noticed she was carrying a child swaddled up in a blanket, which struck me as a poor choice considering it was the middle of summer. Just seemed too warm for a swaddle. So I said to my mum, we really should pick up that woman. Surely she isn't too far from where she needs to go and she has a baby. And to my surprise, my mum pulls up into the gas station parking lot, tells me to go in and get a large bottle of water and we will ask her if she would like a ride. So we pull out the gas station and approach the thin, almost sickly looking woman, and she very quietly just grabbed the door handle and got inside, not saying anything, not even a thank you, which really didn't sit right with me because this is the South. Everyone is friendly and approachable for the most part. So we ask where she needs to go, and me being in the passenger seat, I turn to look at her, and she's looking down at her baby and cooing at it. She replies without ever looking up from the swaddled being. About 2 miles past the Dollar General on Jeb Stewart. We were very close to that area. I decide to turn and speak to the woman and maybe get a conversation flowing, but as I get a better look at her baby, it was actually a drywall hammer, wrapped up in a blanket inside another blanket. I froze. It was like I'd walked into a deep freezer. I told my mum I really think we should stop because I hear what sounds like knocking, and was very adamant we needed to stop at the upcoming Dollar General. As we pulled in, I told my mum to get out the car and that I needed her help locating the noise, and we met each other at the hood of the car where I told her, Mum, that's not a baby, she has a hammer in that blanket. To which my mother advised me that we should walk inside to see if they had anything to help close that up, and told the woman we would be right back. We walk inside and told them to call the police so that they could help us with this woman, that we could no longer have her in our vehicle, and explained why. My mum gave us some vague reason as to why we couldn't take her further, and she got out of the vehicle very angrily, but almost confused, and we left her in the parking lot. She very well could have just been a really confused woman, with some mental issues perhaps. I don't know. But what I do know is that I don't think she had good intentions for us. So to the lady with a drywall hammer, let's not meet. Years back, when I was still smoking pot, I decided to head back to my friend's house up the road, which was close to 4 miles. My car wasn't working, but man, I really needed to get high. So I started hiking down the main road from my parents' house to my friend's house. I was maybe halfway there when a car pulled up next to me. A man in the driver's seat said, "I'll take you to where you want to go." Being a naive dumb kid, I agreed, and as soon as I got in the car I felt the strangest vibe coming from him, like he wanted to put his greasy fingers on me. The interior of his car was a mess. Old paper cups, discarded McDonald's bags, cigarette boxes, yet the passenger seat was rather spotless, as if he was expecting to have someone ride with him. The conversation that took place began pleasantly but took an odd turn. "So, where you heading?" "Oh, you know, a friend's house. Gonna have some fun." "Yeah, I like to have fun too. Mind if I party with you guys?" "Oh, I'm sorry, but he doesn't like strangers visiting." "Oh, too bad." The rest of the car ride was quiet and only lasted maybe 10 minutes. He stopped in front of my friend's house and I shook his hand. It was clammy and sweaty. I stepped out, went inside, and didn't see him again until 6 months later, when I was watching a news report on the TV and saw my ride being sentenced to 8 life terms. The man that gave me that ride was none other than Ronald Dominique. To add some context, Ronald J. Dominique confessed to murdering 23 men over 9 years and dumping their bodies in sugarcane fields, ditches, and small bayous in 6 southeast Louisiana parishes. His reason for killing? He didn't want to return to jail after raping the men. This happened almost 13 years ago. I was visiting my grandmother in a rural section of Lake of the Ozarks, near a small town with a hilarious name where I went to high school. I was very familiar with the area, and when visiting my grandmother, I would often walk into town, taking backward trails until I reached the main road going into town. Very rarely, someone would stop and offer a ride, and normally I would accept. It's a small town in a rural area where everyone mostly knows everyone else, so I wouldn't even look up until I was getting in the vehicle. I stopped accepting rides after this. I had just come out of the woods and was walking along the side of the road. I was still maybe a mile or two out of town and enjoying my walk. An older, blue Ford Taurus pulls up next to me. The driver rolls down the passenger window. "Need a ride?" I hear, and start to walk over. I get in and get a good look at my driver. The man looked like a greasier version of Charles Manson. Flat, stringy brown hair that looked like it hadn't been washed in over a week that came down to his jawline. He had salt and pepper, 5 o'clock shadow and piercings, wild blue eyes, and something about him rang every alarm bell in my body, and I went to get back out the car, but we were already in motion. Instead, I began to look around the vehicle. The front was relatively normal and even clean. The back seat was covered with a blanket. On top of the blanket was something that takes up nearly the entire back seat wrapped in a tarp. Whatever it is, stands at about 1.5 feet off the back seat. On top of all of this is a big black shaggy dog that was staring right through me. "What are you doing here?" The question slapped me back to the front seat. "I'm sorry, what?" He's staring at me instead of the road. "What are you doing here?" "Oh, I'm visiting my grandma. I live out of town. I go to college. It's about 90 miles from here, and I'm on my way to see some old friends." He frowns. "No." "Why are you here?" I frown a little. Everything is flashing and going red. My mind is yelling for me to get out now. I just told you." My tension is visibly rising. The dog gives a low growl from the back seat. We're passing the sign from the country line, and there's a gas station coming up there that marks the beginning of town. He's still staring at me. "Why are you here? Why are you here? Why are you here?" He screams, out of nowhere, slams his hand at the steering wheel, and I'm huddled against the door, shaking. He pulls me to the gas station. "Give me your glasses." Statement, no question, not emotion. Without question, I hand them over. "Wait here." He goes into the store. I'm frozen in place, shaking, and trying to will my arms or legs to work, trying to start breathing again. I know whatever the hell is going on. I need out fast. The dog gave another low growl and then snapped me into action. I get up, almost rolling out of the car. Shakily, I walk into the store and in an equally shaky voice say to the guy, "This is close enough to where I'm going. I'd like my glasses now, please." My eyesight is very poor, but I could feel the intensity of the glare he gave me. I think the cashier could too, because she took a couple of steps back, closer to the store phone. Silently, he hands me my glasses and continues to stare daggers at me as I put them on, and walks out of the store without saying a word to either of us. The cashier stares at me, clearly freaked out. "What the hell was that?" she asks me. The adrenaline of the situation has started to wear off, and the real gravity starts to sink in. Tears are beginning to silently course down my face. "Can I use your phone, please?" I ask her. She nods and wordlessly hands it to me with a box of tissues. She tells me I can go into the manager's office to make my phone call, and take as much time as I need. I thank her, go back, and let my friends know what just happened. I also tell them I will be cutting through the woods to get to them, because I don't want to see this guy ever again, and that I will be coming up behind the house. I took a few minutes to breathe and relax after I hung up. When I went back out, the cashier asked if I was okay, and asked if there was anything she could do for me. I thanked her again and told her no, and asked if she knew the guy. She had never seen him before and didn't think he was from the area. That shook me even more. I gave her my friend's phone number and asked her to call them if he comes back. I left, cut through the woods to my friend's house, and we had a great afternoon. And when I was ready to leave, they gave me a ride home. At the time it didn't bother me much, but the longer I've had to think about it, the more curious I am about the back seat. That dog wasn't moving from whatever was underneath it, unless the guy told him to. I try not to think about what was under the tarp too much. It just looked like someone lying in the fetal position from behind. I want to point out I'm a 6'1" male that was around 210 pounds at the time, and I wore my hair down to my waist with a full beard. I myself was a little intimidating, and would occasionally accidentally scare people just from my appearance. But the aura that this man gave off nearly had me wetting myself. There was no question he could have overpowered me. I live in a really small rural area, but I don't drive, which can sometimes be a real pain. Occasionally, if I can't get a lift from a friend or a taxi, I hitchhike to the nearby towns, about a 10-minute drive either way. This has never been an issue, as I usually end up finding out the driver knows my parents, either through their work or because both sides of my family are from the area, and everyone pretty much knows everyone. So one day I finish work and can't get a lift home, and decide to hitch, and pretty quickly a car stops. It's on the main road and there are quite a few cars behind the one that stopped for me, so the guy driving pulls off pretty fast. I buckle my seatbelt and say, "Thank you so much," and the driver, who's around his mid-50s maybe, responds with, "Why are you thanking me?" But before I can answer, he says, "I'm not a rapist," and begins to laugh. I'm horrified, but laugh nervously along with him, wondering if maybe he just has a dark sense of humor, which is fine, but this was definitely not an appropriate situation. I put my hand into my pocket and flip my penknife open just in case, but he begins talking casually about the weather, asking me where I'm going, and the rest of the drive goes pretty normally until we reach my village. I say to him, "Anywhere along this road is fine to drop me off." He pulls the car off the road really quickly, and he suddenly seems extremely angry and just yells, "Get out my car!" So I politely thank him for the lift, because that's just how I am, and almost fall out the door trying to get out as quickly as possible. Still to this day, I'm not sure if he was serious or not. If maybe he had some kind of mental health issue that would explain his rapid-fire mood swing, or even perhaps he was just trying to scare a young woman out of doing something as dangerous as hitchhiking. I still hitch, but a lot less liberally than I used to. So to the strange man with the creepy intention, let's not meet again. Christmas Eve dinner at Burger King. Sounds innocent enough, right? Not my first choice, but I had to work late, and being Christmas Eve, it looked to be my best choice. I got finished working at 9 and had some coupons for Burger King, so that made my decision for me. When I got to Burger King, I noticed it was still open, but the dining room was shut down. The only way I could get something is if I went through the drive-thru. Only problem is I don't have a car. I tried to walk up to the drive-thru and place my order, but the compassionate young lady working the drive-thru wasn't having it. She told me if I didn't have a vehicle, I couldn't use the drive-thru. I became rather aggravated and began saying things I'm not proud of. At that moment, an older woman wearing shining armor appeared on the scene and offered me to jump into her car and order my food. At first, I turned her down, not wanting to be a bother, but after some convincing, I decided to accept her help. And after ordering my food, it took so long to get it that I missed my bus and got upset. So the nice woman offered me a ride home, and I kind of felt off-put by the offer and declined. She was persistent, but at the same time nice, and convinced me to take her offer. Mind you, I am a 250-pound 30-year-old man and really didn't feel that threatened by a 50-year-old woman. If the circumstances were different, I would have not taken the ride. After I told her where I lived, we proceeded home. About 5 minutes from my house, she made a wrong turn. I explained that I lived the other way, and that we needed to turn around or let me out here, and I could walk the rest of the way. It was then that the woman's demeanor changed, and she told me that she could not let me spend Christmas Eve alone, and that she was taking me to her house. I told her I needed to get home immediately to let my dog out, and that I would be fine. The woman then tried to entice me with cocaine and liquor at her place, but since I'm in recovery, I told her I wasn't interested. She refused to turn around or let me out, and started to drive strangely, not stopping at stop signs, and I'm not gonna lie, my mind was racing and I began to sweat. I knew that I could physically overpower this woman, but what awaited me at her house? I also felt bad about hurting her after all her kindness, but I had to get away before her house, and I didn't know where that was, so I didn't have much time to find out. Then all of a sudden, luckily, the car in front was stopped at a stop sign, and across from it was another stopped also. She had to slow down, almost at a stop at this point, to where I made my break, jumping out of the car, still moving, and leaving my food in the car and taking off running. As I was running, she stopped, got out of the car, and began to try and talk to me into getting back in with her. That just wasn't an option. I didn't know what her motives were or who she was, but I knew I wasn't willing to risk my life over it. I ran all the way home and made sure I wasn't followed. What would have happened to me if it was 2 years earlier and I was still doing drugs and drinking? Her offer of cocaine and booze would have probably worked. Kidnapping, murder, sex trafficking, organ trading, or something else. Being a man, the thought of the vulnerability most women face every day was so foreign to me that I now understand the fear most women face. I really feel this nice woman had a nefarious purpose. Thinking about it, the ruse of such a non-threatening bait would be perfect to lower the guard of a prospective victim. Any thoughts would be appreciated. I never went to the cops because I thought they might not believe me or look down on me for being scared in this situation. What if, by not reporting this, someone else ends up hurt? Or whatever didn't happen to me, happened to them. I am a 29-year-old non-binary person. I'm an autistic introvert and hate being touched. When this happened, I was 20. I grew up in a small town in southwest Ohio. I had just gotten back from my uncle's house in Oklahoma. I have horror stories about him too, but I digress. I was on meetme.com before it was myyearbook.com, and that was before Facebook but after MySpace. Well, I was kinda lonely, so I just started surfing to see who caught my eye. I got a message from this dude on the Meet Me app, and we hit it off online. It took me about a month before I actually decided to meet him. He messaged me once a day and asked if we could meet. After I gave it a bit of thought, I agreed. My problem is that I neither had my license or a car, so my only other option besides walking was riding my brother's bike. I went through my contacts and even asked my dad. All of my attempts were met with a no, even though I had $10 on me for gas. So as I was on my way to his house, stupid I know, I was about halfway there when I got the shock of my life. I was riding on the side of the main road going through town. I hit a sewer drain, and somehow my front tire got lodged in the sewer grates and sent me flying over the handlebars. Luckily there weren't any oncoming cars in my lane at the time, but the folks at the Fritch Big Boys across the street and the passing drivers all got a good laugh. I, however, did not. Well, he turned out to be a jerk because he had a car but refused to drive me home, when I offered gas money especially. Then suddenly his car had all these problems. Before I left, I asked my friend to pick me up from his house when I called from his Wi-Fi, as I was broke and couldn't pay for my phone service. Keep this in mind. This story is not about my ex. I was about to call my friend. I called once. There was no answer, so I called again. I called the third time and she finally answered, only to tell me that she was busy, to wait an hour and then she would get me. I waited the entire hour, uncomfortable because his behavior towards me was going somewhere I didn't want it to. As his behavior was starting to get more erratic and threatening, I said that it was about time I leave because it was getting dark. He begged me to stay, and I called said friend again, hoping she'd say she was on her way. But the answer never came, so I decided to start walking. I was devastated. I knew the walk was going to be long and difficult and couldn't ride the bike, and decided that it would be best to leave my brother's bike behind. Well, about 13 miles into my walk home, I checked my phone to see what time it was. 7:30 p.m. It was getting dark when this black Ford F-150 stops and asks me if I want to ride. He seemed nice, but I'm naive at times and often miss red flags even though they're smacking me in the face. When I agreed to get in the truck, I noticed a tire iron on the floorboard. He was heavyset, short black hair, thin-framed glasses and moustache. He wore a grey shirt and blue jeans and brown boots. He started with the typical questions like, "What's your name? How old are you?" And then he asked if I was single. I replied matter-of-factly that I was just walking home from my then-boyfriend's house. We got about 4.5 miles from my place, where my family lived, when he went on a rant about how women nowadays are so easy to give it out. He reached over and reached into my spaghetti-strap shirt under my bra and grabbed my breast and started rubbing it. I froze. He stopped and then went into my sweatpants. At this point I'm trying to come up with a way to get away from this man, and then I remember the tire iron that was by my feet. I asked if I could smoke a cigarette. He said I could, so I set my backpack down between my legs on the floorboard and made it look like I was looking for some. The backpack was slightly on top of the tire iron, and I grabbed it and said that if you don't stop the truck, I'll make us wreck. He still didn't stop. I was thoroughly pooping myself at this point, and I swung my arm back and busted his back window out and screamed at him to stop the truck. He was screaming and cussing me out and calling me all sorts of colourful terms, and he slammed on the brakes, and I hopped out of the truck and ran behind it to the left side of the road. Again, more stupidity. Where we stopped was part of a national reserve that I happened to know quite well. You might be asking yourself, why didn't you run the other way? Well, on that side of the road was a bit of fenced-in land and the gate was always locked. Anyway, I'm in the woods heading towards my family's house. I knew if I didn't get home soon it was going to get dark and I'd be lost in the woods. I wasn't much bigger than I am now, and I was sweating heavily, so I needed a few breaks. My heart was pounding so hard, and it was hard to catch my breath. I swore. Every noise I heard was me thinking he was about to grab me. I made it home in about an hour of trekking through the woods. I told my family what happened and they just shrugged it off. It made me feel very invalidated. My family has never been a source of comfort or safety, just another reason why I don't trust anyone. When I calmed down and cooled off, I decided to go confront the so-called friend, and looked in the parking lot for her van. She was home. I knocked on her door and confronted her, and she finally came clean. She said she was home the whole time, and I told her what happened and she just didn't care. I was hurt and angry with everyone in my life at that point, and I haven't spoken to her since. So to my so-called friend and the dirty old man, I hope I'll never see you again. My dad used to tell me and my brothers all sorts of stories from his youth hitchhiking down the East Coast. There are two that have always really stuck with me, and I figured you guys might like this. When my dad was 15, he left home in Massachusetts and hitchhiked down to Florida, where his older sister was living in Daytona. This event apparently happened on this trip somewhere in Virginia. He had been trying to hitch a ride outside of some city, though he could never remember which one. This happened in 1976, and there were a lot of drugs done between now and then, and this really nice car stopped and picked him up. He and the driver get talking, and the guy tells my dad that he's a surgeon at one of the local hospitals, gives him a business card, and tells him that if he ever needs anything at the hospital, just to give them his name. All is going well, and he is apparently heading pretty far south for some family function, so it's a long way that my dad doesn't have to walk. He seems like a nice professional guy, clean cut, well spoken, and then it starts to get weird. The doctor starts giving my dad a side eye, and seems like he wants to say something but can't quite figure out how to say it. Of course, my dad is just sort of ignoring him because, as he says, I had been on the road for a while and hadn't had a shower or changed my clothes in weeks. Then the guy finally comes out and says it. "Can I suck you off?" My dad was obviously taken aback by this and tells him, "No, please, just a little." "No, I'll give you $50 if you let me do it." "No, how about if you just let me see it? Can I see it?" "No, I think you better let me off here." And surprisingly, the guy does. He pulls off at a rest stop and lets my dad out. Before he pulls away, he hands my dad that $50 and tells him, "Sorry about that, man. I hope I didn't blow your mind or anything. I know it isn't that creepy, but I thought you guys might like it." My dad always said the guy didn't seem like a bad guy, just really messed up, and honestly sorry to have freaked him out so bad. A number of years back, I was driving along a deserted stretch of highway with no cars around. I was feeling quite tired, getting near the point of falling asleep at the wheel, when I noticed something in my headlights ahead. It's a woman. I start to slow down my car. What is she doing out here at this time of night anyway? She had her thumb sticking out and was wearing jeans and a leather jacket, dark hair flowing down past her shoulders, but her face wasn't that visible. I roll down the window and ask if she needs a ride. She doesn't say anything, and I push the door open and she sits in the car. I start the car, check my mirror, and head away. I give her a good look. She hasn't really moved much, so I ask a few questions to break the ice. "Where you heading?" No reply. There was a deep, long silence between me asking the question and the reply that never came. I gave her another look. "You okay?" Again. She doesn't reply and doesn't look towards me either. Her eyes focused on the road ahead. I snap back to reality and look back at the windshield along the same stretch of highway. I don't try to force the conversation, but I did need to know where she wanted to go. My mind started racing. What if she's out to attack me, or hustle me, or something like that? My concern grew. Just as I was thinking all these things, I turned to her to say something again. What, I can't remember, but as I twist my head to look her way, she's gone. My heart skips about 5 beats, and I twist my head frantically to the back seat of my car, and she's not there either. I slowly bring the car to a stop, look all around my car. Where the hell did she go? She had just been here a moment ago, and now she was gone. I decided to myself I must have been hallucinating. As I said earlier, I was quite tired, almost the verge of falling asleep at the wheel before I saw her. And as you can imagine, the adrenaline pumping through my system kept me awake for the remaining 2-hour drive until I made it home at 1 a.m. The story doesn't end there though. A number of years later, I'm meeting with some friends. We're having beers and a barbecue, and we're talking, when the subject of ghost stories comes up. One of my friends, Alan, is offhandedly mentioning that he knows someone who claims that the particular stretch of road that I was on is haunted by a hitchhiker. I didn't have the courage to fess up my story, but hearing that definitely validated my encounter with whatever the hell that was that night. In the summer of 2001, 2 close friends and I decided to take a hitchhiking trip around our home province of Ontario, Canada. We were out of school, had no jobs, and didn't have anything in our minds except good times and exploration. We were 3 18 to 19-year-old males looking to dry some of that wetness behind our ears. Amazingly, we got a straight ride from our hometown all the way to Toronto. I believe the only reason he picked us up is because my girl at the time had been with us to see us off. When he discovered she wasn't coming, he grudgingly told us to get in anyway. I was in the back seat with Jack, and my friends were called Jack and Charlie. Charlie falls asleep pretty fast in the front seat after the typical few minutes of warm-up chit-chat. After a while, the guy starts asking us creepy questions and saying creepy things. It's been 12 years, so I can't recall anything other than every half hour he would say, "It's only a few hours till we get to Toronto, if you make it there." I just figured he was a bit freaked out with having 3 guys in the car. We get there, he dropped us off right in the middle of Jane Street by Finch. For anyone wondering, this is a place where people drop money on the ground and someone else will run up, pick it up, and literally spit drugs on the ground. It was quite something to see. We walked a good 16 blocks until we found a go bus to the suburbs, Brampton, and slept there for the night. We sure ran into a lot of characters and ended up in a few sketchy situations. I suppose that's all stuff for another day. The meat and potato of the stories lies in Guelph, Ontario. We had arrived in the late afternoon/early evening and decided to head downtown. We were near the church of Our Lady Immaculate, just enjoying the scenery when we were approached by a guy a few years older than us, in his mid-20s. He seemed like a normal dude. "Hey, you guys blaze?" "Yeah, man," one of my friends intones his lurch-like voice. "You rang? Wanna buy some?" he counters. Seeing as we had procured a little bit in Brampton, we turned him down, and he walked away about 100 feet or so, talking to someone else. Not 5 minutes later, a couple of guys in their mid-20s, muscular and rough-looking, walk up to us and ask if we have any buds to sell. We tell them we don't, but to talk to the guy over there, and he asked us if we wanted some. The 2 guys walked over to him, and we hear some yelling, and turn around to witness the 2 guys robbing the first guy who approached us. Sorry about that. We're thinking now is a good time to get scarce and end up slinking up the church steps and sleeping on the hill behind it. That's the bit I wanted to share. The whole trip was intersped with various incidents, including a 60-something-year-old trucker who smoked a bowl with us before planting his hand on my thigh. I wasn't having any of it though, and he was pretty respectful when I spoke up about it. I would be too, sharing a vehicle with 3 18 to 19-year-old guys traveling together. This was last June before I turned 18. Me and some friends went on a surfing holiday to an English town in Cornwall. We decided to visit a place called the Eden Project, which was a massive indoor rainforest, but it was quite far away. We got a bus which dropped us off about 5 miles away and planned to walk the rest of the way. We ended up getting very lost, and to make matters worse, it started pouring very heavy rain, and we were stuck in the middle of the English countryside. We decided to see if anyone on the road would give us a lift, so we did the usual stick out your thumb hitchhiker thing. A few cars went by, until a truck stopped. It was 2 very big grown men that looked like a good few years older than us. We felt a little uneasy when we saw, since we were 4 young-looking girls, but I went up to the window to speak to them anyway. The guys looked up and down at us in a very creepy fashion, and I asked if they were going to the Eden Project. They said they were going wherever we were, and that we should all get in their truck. At this point I was slightly freaked out, then noticed the open beer cans sitting in the cup holders. I politely said no thank you, and they should carry on, and we would find a different car. The driver hesitated, and looked me up and down again before speeding off. I was a little freaked out after that, but we ended up getting a lift off some nice elderly Americans in a minivan, so it turned out alright in the end. I'm glad none of us got in the truck with them though. They were giving us seriously creepy vibes, and in all fairness, you should never drink and drive. Hey guys, it's Mort here and thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel because you haven't, and press the bell icon to be notified every time I post, because let's face it, you're here every week, so you might as well. I'd also like to give a huge thanks to my members and my patrons, who are all amazing people, and to the first person who bought me a coffee. I haven't bought the coffee yet, anonymous donation person, but I will later today, so thank you. I'll be thinking of you in about 3 hours. I just hope you liked the video, really. We haven't done hitchhikers in a while, and it was a topic I really have wanted to do, but it takes a while to find, half-decent hitchhiking stories. There used to be a narrator who used to go by the name of Hitchhiker. This was around 5 years ago now? 4 years ago. But one day he vanished. I think he was a bit aggro in the community. I think he upset some people, said a few horrible things, and then just kind of vanished. Who knows, really, what happened to Hitchhiker? If you know what happened to the narrator Hitchhiker, but I'd be interested to know. I don't know the whole story, really, but I know he kind of deleted his channel. Or maybe it was deleted for him. Conspiracies. Alright then guys, enough of my ramblings. It's time for you to watch another video. Link on screen to either one of these two, and remember the golden rule. If you're going to stop watching YouTube, click on someone else's channel, not mine, because the algorithm will not like it. Just remember that.